If you're a service business owner and you've got questions about Google Ads, you've come to the right place. In this week's Q&A, we're answering your toughest marketing questions. And today, we're going to figure out how to make our Google Ads 100% measurable. Stick around and you'll see finally how to figure out the Google ad question of how do I tell if my ads are actually working. All right, welcome back everyone to our weekly Q&A session. I'm so glad you tuned in. My name is Matt Law and I've been helping service businesses with their marketing since back in 2001. If you want to see more videos like this, I want to encourage you to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And if you're interested in submitting a question to be answered on our channel, you can post it in the comments or send an email to questions@gro.inc. That's questions@grow inc. Please be sure to include your city so I can mention you in our show. With that said, let's jump into this week's question. And it comes to us from David in Tampa, Florida, and it's about Google ad spend. And here's what he said. I spent over $2,500 on Google ads last month. That's a lot for our little plumbing business. The problem is I have no idea if it actually brought me any real customers. I feel like I'm just paying for clicks and getting ghosted. How can I tell if it's even working? So first of all, David, I want to thank you for sending in your question, and it totally stinks, and it's a super valid question that you're asking. It's actually a very common question from service businesses that don't know how to measure their marketing, and Google doesn't make it really easy to figure out either. So how do you know if it's working? Well, there's a few factors. First of all, what I would ask is this a new Google Ads account? And if it is, you need to know new Google Ads accounts don't do well at first, because Google needs to learn in their algorithm what your objectives are. And the more you feed it the right data, the more it will give you back what you are looking for. Secondly, I'm asking, and you're probably not doing this, but I'm going to ask is, are you measuring the data correctly? So there are two ways that we're going to go through in this video of how to measure your marketing. The first way is that you need to set up goals in Google Ads. And the goals that I usually set up in Google Ads are as follows. First of all, you're going to have quote requests. So when people fill out a form on your website to request a quote or something like that, if you do that on your website, most service businesses do, that needs to be a conversion. You also need to have calls. So when somebody calls your main number there, that you add your call extension in Google, that should be a conversion. A lot of plumbers also will do like scheduled appointments. So if you are allowing people to book on your app like House Call Pro or Service Titan or whatever you're using, once they complete that conversion and they've scheduled, it should redirect to another page, which should also count as a goal. So again, you've got quote requests when people filling out a form, maybe you call it a service request, people calling your call extension number, scheduled appointments if you do that, and lastly, for Performance Max campaigns, we sometimes will add driving directions, and of course that is if you have a location. So you gotta set up all of these goals in your system. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Once you have that done, I would suggest you also go in and you create an account with CallRail. It's about $50 per month. And basically you're going to take that dedicated phone number and you're going to put it into a call extension. Once you go into CallRail, you can also set up calls as goals. So what happens is you've got the appointments, you've got scheduling and all of that, but you want to go into CallRail, and if people call you from your website on your CallRail number, we need to track that as a conversion as well. With that said, let me just show you some examples, and I think this will be a little bit easier. So this is for a flooring company. It's a little bit different than your business, but their goals are calls, quotes. They also have booking and driving directions. This campaign is set up correctly and it's aged really well. You can see they generate a ton of calls. This is from last month, 69 phone calls on their Performance Max campaign. They also generated a lot of other phone calls as well. I found another company, it's another client with a similar ad spend, so I want to show you how you could see it's working as well, and this is a great example. This client spent about $2,500 a month. Most of their marketing spend actually is not a lot in ads. They generate a ton of organic, a ton of referral campaigns, and so they're a very successful business, but they don't have to spend a whole lot of money on Google Ads. You can still see they generated 29 calls on Performance Max. The remarketing campaign did not generate any calls. That's okay. We're staying in front of the prospects and everyone in the funnel. And then you can see we've got 13 phone calls from search, which is people clicking on the call extension as well. Overall, it shows 42 calls from Google Ads, a mix of Performance Max and search. So as you look over to the right, you'll see under conversions on the far right side, there's 22 other conversions for Performance Max, 41 for the East campaign, and 11 for the West campaign. If you go over, and I'll show you those in a minute, those are people that are filling out quote reforms or calling their call number in CallRail, and I'll show you that. So let's dig in and I'll show you this. So this is CallRail, and this shows only calls from ads. So you can see I've got a source there and it says Google Ads. So these are people that are calling directly from Google Ads, and it will either be their call extension number, and you'll notice it's a few less than what Google is actually giving credit for, and that is because some of their calls are not being recorded because they are going through the PMAX campaign and they are people that are ending up calling the main number. Google shows only in this report, it only shows people that are calling through their CallRail numbers extensions. So overall, you can see the data is pretty accurate. So usually when we run a CallRail report, we'll have a few less calls in Google, but I want you to know, and I'm showing you this stuff, you should be able to see if everything is set up the right way. You should be able to see goals in Google Ads, and you should be able to go in and see how that is working, and then you can actually go in and listen to your calls. Let me show you a quick setup of how goals are set up, and we'll kind of dive into this. And so you can see their top goal there is driving directions, and I kind of put this out of order, but I added them together. You can see driving directions. This is only on their Performance Max campaigns. I think they had 22 other conversions on it. So you've got 12 people here that have done driving directions. And then the other 10 are either form fills requesting a quote or people requesting a call. You will notice that they generated a ton of calls. If you look at submit lead form, there's 28 people in the last 30 days that filled out a form from Google Ads. One of these quotes I was just looking at is like for a $35,000 pool cage. Of course, this is a great return on investment when you think about it. You can see all the calls that they have from ads. And those are the phone calls from that they are saying a phone call lead. That's the call extension. And then you've got under the contact, you've got phone calls. That is a CallRail number, somebody even clicking over to the website and the dynamic numbers changing. And then you've got click to calls in there as well. So if you kind of dig through all of that, there's a lot of actions here. And these are the main things that we want. So when you set up a Google Ads campaign, you have to make sure your goals are in place and you only put in the things that you really want to see happen. So you can see activity here and you're like, Matt, that's good, but how do I figure out ROI? And this is probably the hardest part, is that you need to actually take the data when people fill out a quote form and they request a quote online, and it needs to get passed on to your CRM. Now, CallRail, you can do form tracking as well, but we have a custom script that passes the UTM data, which you'll see over on the right-hand side of the screen, onto that lead. So you can see that they came from Google Ads, PPC, and a search campaign on East. We also asked, it's the east side of the county, we also asked them, hey, how did you hear about us? And they said Google Ads. And so I blocked out their information, but this is just a quick screenshot of the CRM. So when we log in and we look at reports every so often, we can say, hey, it's working. Look at the deals that came from Google, or we'll look at the deals that came from Search Campaign East. If we look at the next slide, this is a phone call, and I've blocked out some of the data to keep it private. But you can see this is a phone call that just happened a few days ago, September 8th. It's a 5-minute and 27-second phone call. You can listen to the MP3, and you can see the customer spoke mostly, and the agent, which is the girl who answers the phone, she spoke only 20% of the time. And so she's asking her information, and then the customer is talking about what they want. When I look this up, this is a very expensive screen room job. It would be very, very expensive, probably $30,000, $40,000 in a very nice neighborhood. And you can basically listen to the entire call. So 2 ways you can track if it's working. First of all, you set, and I'll give you 3. You set up everything in Google Ads. And what I mean by that is you set up all your goals, all your conversions, and then we're saying, hey, Google, this is what I want. Now that isn't going to tell you everything, but the good news is you can see, hey, we're getting calls, we can get in lead forms. And as those forms come in, you can say, hey, I just got a lead from Google Ads. You have to have tracking in your UTM code where you're catching it and passing it on through hidden fields to be able to do this. But whenever our clients get a lead, they can say, hey, that lead came from Google, or hey, that lead just came from Meta. Or when their phone rings and it's a call from a Google ad, it actually tells them, hey, you've got a call from Google Ads. So you set that up the right way in Google, and you set up all of the tracking. And then every so often you go through and you have to figure out your return on investment. Best way to do that is to kind of go through, see what's closed, and figure out all of the marketing sources, and you can figure out a return on investment. Once you kind of know what's working, you don't do this too often. I'm not going back and forth saying, hey, are we getting a good ROI in Google Ads? There's no doubt in my mind, based on the volume of calls and what they're spending and all that, they're getting a really good return on investment. And so we don't do that all the time, but early on when you're figuring out which campaigns work and the forms of marketing that work, you have to do that whenever you launch new campaigns. But that is an overview of how you can make your Google Ads measurable and make sure they're working. If you haven't done this stuff and you're spending $2,500 a month, really nobody knows. And if the agency has not done this for you, then really they have no idea. If you're spending that kind of money on Google Ads or more, some companies are spending $10,000 a month and they're not doing the things that I am explaining. It's amazing how much money they're wasting. With that said, I want to share with you some of our free resources. And we have a full training on how to measure your marketing in Google Ads and our audio resources. But we've got an awesome book. It goes through our 4-step formula for growth. You can request all of our free training resources in the description below. I think you're going to love our book, by the way. And if you were to opt in for it, you can read it in about 2 hours. I also have the audio version. And what's so great about this is that it goes through our formula for growth, from what is your overall message and your unique selling points to how to generate more leads on all of your platforms. We also dig through the full marketing arsenal and how to measure everything. And lastly, we talk about marketing automation. It's about 100 pages, but you can also read it on a digital device such as your iPad or your iPhone. And you can also listen to it in audio format if you're on the road. We also include some cool checklists so you know what we're doing and kind of understand kind of the process. There's a lot of great resources and tons of hours of training. We just added one for how to scale your business as well. So hopefully you find all of that really, really helpful. With that said, if you'd like to submit a question, just drop it in the comments and we might feature your question in an upcoming episode. You can also email us at questions@gro.inc. That's questions@grow.inc. And we'll consider adding your questions to our show. Lastly, be sure to subscribe so you can watch our weekly Q&A with service business owners. And as always, we appreciate you watching and hope you have an amazing day.